6th.
Yeah. South, north.
Yeah,
it's,
going to Jura.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I bet. Oh, I'll be very interested in hearing how that. If you've done it before.
It's not no.
No, I'll be very interested because.
Could I welcome everybody to the meeting this evening and explain that there's going to be slightly something different at the beginning. Our previous chairman, Councillor Newton, and Vice Chairman, Councillor Lloyd Smith, have sent their apologies for this meeting. As the longest serving councillor, I have to take the chair initially, but I'm going to ask councillors if there is anybody who be prepared to take the chair for this particular meeting. Could I have nominations? A nomination for this evening's chair.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Smith.
I would second that.
And all councillors happy with that? Yeah? So Councillor Smith will take the chair.
Now on to the second chairman. Right, thank you. By way of further clarification, as Sue, Councillor Ash, has just explained, she took the chair initially because she's the longest serving councillor, but it is a requirement that if the chairman of the meeting, who has been elected in the past, and the vice chairman neither are here, then we have to have a chairman of the meeting. Chairman always the normal chairman always chairs it if he's here, the vice chairman chairs it if he's here and the other one isn't, but otherwise we have to have an election, and that's what we've just had, and so I'm now chairman of this meeting for tonight only. Now, the first item on the agenda, because this is the May meeting, which is known as the annual meeting of the Parish Council, we have a lot of standard items that we have to do. And the very first one is to elect the chairman for the next year. It would normally be, incidentally, the chairman of the last year, who would be sitting here instead of Sue and now me. And it is always possible for him to be or her to be re-elected, or somebody else. But in any event, I'm chairman for tonight, second chairman, and the first thing we have to do is to elect a chairman for the rest of the year. Whoever we elect then serves for that year unless he resigns or she resigns, and then next May there will be another election. That's where we are. So what I want to do, please, is to ask for nominations for a chairman for the ongoing meetings, not tonight. And while the past chairman, John Newton, is not here, he has notified the clerk that should he be nominated, seconded and elected, he is willing to serve. So he can be nominated, but he doesn't have to be nominated. It's up to councillors to decide, as we do every year. Can I ask for nominations then for chairman?
I would nominate John Newton to return to the chair.
Right, second.
Are there any other nominations? No. Can I ask for a vote then on John Newton as chairman for the rest of the year? Okay, thank you for that. So he will carry on from next meeting, assuming he's here. Now the next thing is that he would normally have to sign the declaration of office straight away while he sits here, but he's not here. So what we now need to do is to resolve that he can sign the declaration of office, obviously when he is back, and before the next meeting. Is that resolved? Does everybody understand that and is happy with that? So we've accepted that he won't be signing it tonight because he's not here. This is all, by the way, all laid down legally. We're not just making a fuss, it's what has to be done. Okay, that's all good. Now the second item on the agenda for tonight is to elect a vice chairman. The vice chairman of last year, Alan Lloyd-Smith, has let the clerk know that he is open to serving again should he be nominated, seconded and elected. But it does not have to be him, it can be whoever we wish. Can I have nominations for a vice chairman for the coming year, please?
Yeah. Alan Lloyd-Smith.
Alan Lloyd-Smith. Any seconder for that? Paul? Votes? Any other nominations? No. Can I have votes then please to elect Alan Lloyd-Smith as vice chairman? Good. There is no declaration of office needed for vice chairman, so we do not have to do that. And now we will carry on with the rest of the agenda as normal, except that you've got me as chairman. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Councillors Newton and Lloyd-Smith, who had previous engagements.
Indeed. Are we happy with their reasons for skiving tonight?
Yes.
Yep, we're all right. Thank you. I know one of them is in places somewhere foreign and the other one's the other end of the country, isn't he? Right, okay. Right, the standard things then that we come to every month, apart from those extra elections. Declaration by members of any interest, pecuniary or other than pecuniary, in accordance with Council's Code of Conduct and its guide to the declaration of council of interest and other matters. I will declare that item 17A for 20 the street, it's a very minor other than pecuniary interest. The applicant has been doing work in our house and I have ongoing commercial relation there, so I will declare that as an other than interest, and I will probably not vote. I could, but I won't probably. It's only pecuniary ones where I can't in our code. Right, to approve any applications for dispensation, we don't need any, because an other than doesn't need a dispensation. A reminder to everyone that the meeting is being recorded for a publication on YouTube, if it all works, and there's the microphone. And at this point then I will adjourn the meeting for the public session, as we always do. And the first thing we usually talk about, if anyone wants to raise issues, are the planning applications. The first one is Peeling Quarter Farm. Is anyone here to talk about? Oh, I'm on the wrong bit?
Yes.
I'm being told off. That's the ones that have been approved. 20 the street. So that's the Peace Cottage down on the right hand side, with an extension being proposed at the back.
Lovely.
Does anyone have any comments from the public to talk about on that? No? Okay. We'll be talking about it in the council later. The next one is the Swan. There's an application in for change of use from being a public house to a residential dwelling. Do you wish to speak about that, Kevin?
Well, I've been invited to this meeting this evening. Thank you very much. Very nice. May I just ask a couple of questions before we start? You can ask me anything you like and I'll give you an honest answer. All I ask in return is that if I ask you a question, you give me an honest answer.
You're not entitled to do that. You're
But-
welcome to say
Yeah,
it,
but that's what I'd like, is just
the
an honest
entitlement
answer.
doesn't go any further than that.
Have you already made your decision?
Not to my knowledge.
No, not your knowledge.
We've
So-
all got views.
We've got
I dare
views.
say.
You've got views, but nobody's made a decision.
Everyone will have to speak for themselves.
Yeah,
But
so
I know
your
what you're
chairman's-
talking about.
So your chairman, who unfortunately isn't here this evening, who's put on social media that he's asking the people of the village please object now. So it's not really giving me a fair case if the chairman of the parish council is asking the village to object to my application when it hasn't even been discussed at the parish council meeting. But by the by, I just thought I'd make that.
Tim.
Does anybody want to ask me anything about the Swan?
Let me point out there, Kevin, and these are complicated and delicate issues. I understand that you're worrying about predetermination. Councillors are entitled to have views in advance and they're entitled to discuss them. What they're not supposed to do is to make a final decision.
Okay.
You will be aware, as you can see, that he will not be here making a final decision, so it's really a bit immaterial.
Would anybody like to ask any questions about the Swan?
Yes, I understand that you've applied for a change of.
That's correct, Mervyn.
Is there any other ideas you may have for the car park or whatever?
No, all I've done is apply for straight change of use. That's all I've done. At the moment, I let the villagers use the car park. I let the pizza man use the car park to sell pizzas on. There's a man that lives in Lloyd's Green that buys and sells cars and takes them back to Czechoslovakia. So I let him keep all his cars on my car park because the cars are not taxed or insured.
No, I understand that.
So I think for safety purposes
I was
will be covered.
thinking more of the future rather than the present.
I've got no plans to, if you get that, am I planning to put in an application to build houses on the car park? No, I'm not. I'm just going for straight change of use.
Okay.
No alterations whatsoever.
Will that change of use be affected by the licensing of it
It would be delicensed if I got change of use.
automatically?
Automatically, yes. It's still licensed and the licence is still paid.
Okay. I mean, I raised the question because the Ewan Lamb took years to get delicensed.
He never applied for, he never put his pub up for sale. You have to put a building up for sale and give people the opportunity to buy that pub as a going concern.
Right.
So that it can continue as a pub. The Ewan Lamb just closed down and he applied for change of use, so he didn't go through the planning procedure. I think now, because it's been closed for about 20 years, he's automatically got it now. Hopefully I'm not here in 20 years.
Can I just say something?
Yes, you can ask a
Can I
question.
say something to the
No,
chair?
carry on.
I'm Judith Featherstone. I live next door to the Swan. I had a retail premises on the outskirts of Maidstone, a shop which was an equestrian shop. 20 years ago, my husband and I tried to sell it, and we tried to, not the premises, but not the business, we moved the business. And eventually, after 3 years, we knew the only way we could do it was to get planning permission, which we got, to turn it back into a house, and it has been turned back into a very nice house. I would fully support the Swan being turned into a house.
All right, thank you.
Because I'd much rather it be used than be empty, which it was when Paul had it, and we had rats, and it was really awful, and I can't see a future for it as a pub.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. Thank you very much. I mean that sincerely. Thank you.
I came to
All right.
support.
Thank you very much. I mean, thank you.
Okay, Kevin, do other people on the public side want to raise points on the Swan while we're talking about it? No? Paul?
A couple of questions, Kevin. The first one you might not be able to answer, and I completely respect that. The second one I hope you could do. Have you received any offers?
I received one offer from I'm not taking the mic, I'm just telling you how it was.
Yeah.
I received one offer from a Chinaman who was an Elvis impersonator. And he made me an offer and he gave me a deposit of £10,000 and we wrote out an agreement. I then gave him from March 2024 till the end of September 2024 to complete the deal, which I was quite happy with. At the end of September 2024, he owns a he owned a Chinese restaurant in Ashford. It's now a Gurkha restaurant in Ashford, and he wanted the guy that was leasing it off him to buy it off him. That never happened, and so because it never happened, he wasn't able to lend the money. That is the only person that has shown any interest in nearly 2 years of it being on the market. I've had no other interest whatsoever. I've had no other viewings whatsoever. As you know, I have offered it to the village to buy for over 5 years, interest free. Over 3 months ago, I attended a meeting at the village hall, and I think the village needs a pub. Quick point here, I don't want to turn it into a house. The village needs a pub. 100%. I've been doing this all my life. I've been a publican 45 years. The village needs a pub. But it needs a pub that the people
I would
use.
disagree with you, Kevin.
Sorry?
I would disagree with you. I think the village does need a pub.
And it will be a tragedy if it goes. It will be a tragedy. So I'm not here taking the mick or trying to be funny. The village needs a pub. It's the centre. It's where you should all go. But if I sat here and said to you, did you come in my pub when it was open? Or did you? Or did you? Or did you?
Yes,
How often did you come in?
quite often. In terms of having meals as well.
When I had it open as...
Yes.
And yourself, did you come in very often?
I didn't come in very often because I'm not personally once a week, twice, 3 times a week pub goer.
So,
But to answer your question, I did go in, and I went in with some friends who were visiting. We only went for a drink. I went in when the Thai restaurant was open. I went in on the opening day along with several hundred other people.
admittedly,
But I'm only one grain of sand,
yes.
right? And I see exactly as you do, the village needs a pub.
Yeah,
And I see it
100%.
as a community asset. The second question I've got, thanks for the
No problem.
first one, about Elvis. You did explain to him that Elvis had left the room.
Yeah, he's left the building.
The second question is, would you consider renting it?
Yeah, I've already said to John I would consider renting it. John knows he's got an email from me going back saying that I was prepared to rent it.
And what length of rental period do you think would be a viable one for someone coming in? What would your advice be?
If I can just give you a background so we can do that. 25% of all pubs have closed in this country since 2000. 25%. That's over 13,500 pubs. Every single pub, from the Peace and Plenty at Rye to Tenterton, has closed on this road. Every single pub. You get 4 buses a day here, or 5 buses, 4 on a Sunday and 5 in the week.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hire staff. We couldn't hire a chef. I know the social club can't even hire bar staff from the local village. Can't even get bar staff. I couldn't get staff. I had a wedding there a couple of weeks ago. I had to bring staff in from Folkestone to man the bar. You can't get staff around here. It's... I'd love somebody to take it, but it's like giving them the poison chalice, because you've got a big building, you've got a village. 71 people went to the meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong. 71 people went to the meeting on the 10th of February.
Huh?
41 people put in slips to say there would be interest to buy it. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but there's nearly 1,200 people live in Wittersham. 70 people went. That's about 5%. 41 people put in a note. That's 3%. Yet I read, vast majority of people in Wittersham want to keep the pub open. Well, if 3% is the vast majority, we haven't got much hope. Now, you can work them figures out. I wouldn't say I'm cock on, but I'll sound pretty close. So 3% of this village want to keep the pub open. Out of that 3%, or 70 people attended, 15 people were locals that used the pub. 15 out of 70. They asked me a question in that meeting, you were there. Mm-hmm. Why hasn't the pub worked? And I said, because you don't use it.
So I'm not going to sit here and debate that with you.
Yeah.
Your experience of getting staff is your experience, but my own research and on the numbers thing, if I quoted the Ewe and Lamb at Rovenden Lane,
Yes.
the ferry,
Yes.
the Woodcock at Iden Green,
Yes.
the Bull at Benenden,
Yes,
all successful pubs.
yes. May I come back on one of them, please?
Just
Yes, yes.
yeah, all successful pubs.
Yes.
And one of the things I picked up in that meeting and previous meetings is they have a very successful, Three Chimneys, for example. They all have a very
I
successful.
don't know the Three Chimneys, but I know three
Well,
of the four.
I've been recently twice in the
Yeah.
last 6. So I'm basing it on the common denominator is food.
Yes.
I would say that any pub in this village or any village doesn't
Yes.
survive purely on local drinkers, and whoever took it over, if they did, they would have to attract people in who were coming as a destination for food. And again, I want to stress that this is not a personal criticism.
No, I'm not taking nothing personal.
But I do think where, for me, where the Swan fell down or didn't fulfil what I was after, is it didn't provide food.
May I interrupt if you don't mind?
Yeah, I'm just giving.
Yeah, no.
And the reason
And I'm sorry I've come across as passionate.
And the reason I mention that, Kevin,
Yeah.
is something important that you said.
Yeah.
About a few people came to
Yeah.
the meeting, and a few people. One of the characteristics of this village is there are a lot of people who come to us privately, off the record, or during the week as councillors, and they are people who are nervous and in some cases afraid of standing up in public and giving their opinions.
And I accept that.
And many examples exist in this village, most of which we all know about. So the numbers are not necessarily absolute, but I think the common thing that everyone kept on saying was, there isn't food that we want.
Yeah. So let's answer some of them questions. Let's take the ferry. So the ferry has a heliport. Quite often see 3 or 4 helicopters on there. It does glamping, it does camping, it does motorhomes. It's got an established food base and it's got millionaire backers. Everything I'm not. You can't compare Liverpool to Accrington Stanley because I'm no Liverpool. I don't support Liverpool, by the way. We haven't got a heliport. We haven't got the best sunset for 20 or 30 miles. That's why people go there, the sunset. It's got a great food establishment,
Yes.
like I say.
Yes.
It's got a heliport. It's got millionaire backers.
We do have helicopter flypast.
I cash my pension in. When I open the Swan, you see, what people don't realise is they come in, they see it done up, they come in and say, when are you starting food? I ploughed in, when I opened that, you all know what I paid for it, and I ploughed in a lot of money to open it. And I didn't have enough money to finish the kitchen. I didn't have enough to hold up my hands. I didn't have enough. But I wanted to get the pub open for the village. Save the Swan. I wanted to get it open. And all I wanted was support from the village. I then cashed in my private pension to finish the kitchen. To get the kitchen finished. You don't know my financial circumstances. So I had to do that to get it open. We then opened I think we opened in the March. We opened 49 hours a week, 7 days a week from 8 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. My wife would get up at 6, half 6 in the morning to open that restaurant and still be up at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. We didn't get the support from the village. We did coffees. We'd have 9 people doing Pilates at the village hall. They'd all pull out of here, pull in the village pub car park. They'd come in for a cup of tea or a coffee. Car park would be packed. But they wouldn't have a breakfast, they wouldn't have a lunch, and they'd keep their card to get their 10 stamps for their free coffee or their free tea. We did not have support from the village. The person before didn't have support, he went bankrupt. The people before that, she's passed away now, but a partner came and see me, threw the keys back. I've been doing this forever, and I can't understand why it don't work. I've got to be honest with you, I honestly don't understand why it don't work. I would love someone to take it. If somebody would come forward, I would love someone to take it. Like I say, I think the village needs a pub, but also the village needs to support the pub, and it's all right saying, well, I don't know what the answer is. I honestly don't know what the answer is.
All right, Kevin, we've spent a very long time on this compared to our usual, and we've all heard what you've said, and thank you very much for that. Does anyone else want to say anything on the public side? Or does any other councillor want to raise anything with Kevin before? Okay, so we'll go off the Swan until we get back to...
Well, I didn't have my 3 minutes to say. You asked me some questions and I answered
You certainly did.
No, but you asked me some questions, which this gentleman did, this lady did and this did, but you didn't let me have my 3 minutes.
I think, well, looking at the clock, it's 26 minutes.
I'm not
past
looking at the
now.
clock, Jeremy. I'm just
It's
looking for my
26
3 minutes.
It's 26 minutes now.
Okay.
It's at the discretion of the chairman. You've had it. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. You see, that's how fair it is here. That's how fair it is.
As you wish, Kevin. I will
Sorry.
now ask.
No, because I'm not prepared to speak up.
raise their own point.
Jeremy, you know you committed fraud and deception when you put into that ABC. I'm not going to change my mind. You committed fraud and deception. I'm not afraid to say it. If you want to take me to court, take me to court. You alone committed fraud and deception.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Sorry.
People here have heard what you've said in the past. They've heard it again, and we're sorry to see you walking out.
No,
Thank
because
you
the
very
truth
much.
hurts, Jeremy. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I've embarrassed anybody. I apologise, but say what I mean.
Go before we exclude you.
Oh, Jeremy, that's all rubbish.
I'm talking what I'm talking. Go away. Right, thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. We don't usually have so much trouble. Let us continue then. We're in the public session, and we've talked about the first of the planning application, well the second actually, but since you've come now, Tim, 20 The Street, would you like to raise any points about your application for us to hear? That's all. It's the public session, so you have the opportunity to speak at the minute.
Not really, it's just a simple two-storey extension.
Extension at the back, yeah.
It's nothing much to it really.
Do any councillors want to ask Tim any questions about this?
I just comment on the heritage departmental statement. When I read that, it sounds like you've got to hire an archaeologist to sit on a stool and watch all. I don't mean that literally, but the statement that came on said they wanted Ashford to stipulate that there had to be an archaeologist involved.
Really? I haven't even looked through it, to be honest.
Sorry, that wasn't meant to. I didn't want to spring that on you. But when I read that, I thought that wasn't really defined. I mean, I can't imagine an archaeologist having to sit there every single day. This is on the off chance that when they were built several centuries ago, that there might be something of interest. And I just was flagging it up to make sure you knew about it. And secondly, I think it's important that Ashford stipulate there must be, are open about the cost. Because to me, if you're engaging an archaeologist to sit there, they're not going to come for nothing.
No.
There's going to be a cost, and I think it's
some time.
I don't think it's fair just to sort of say that with it being open-ended and what have you. It needs to be much tighter, and that's just my view. And I'm not an expert on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read that, but there was a single-storey extension put on by the last owner at the back, and I don't think any of that was happened then.
What's happened as Paul says, it's on the portal from the Kent, whatever they are, the cultural heritage people. They've suggested that by looking at old maps, they can see that there was a building line of cottages along roughly where you want to do your work. And therefore they feel, I'm just quoting from memory reading it this afternoon, they feel that it's possible that when you disturb the ground to do your extension, you may come across artefacts or something, whatever, which will give an indication of how something or other was done in years past in that area. Now, I'm no judge of why that is suddenly important.
I think it'd just be filled with rubble from the last extension.
Well, the other thing they mentioned in it is that you've got to choose an archaeologist from their approved list. And from our experience of doing that on other matters, they don't come cheap. And that's why I wanted to flag it up, so that you don't end up with a big bill.
If it becomes that daft, we just simply won't do it.
I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, I'm just flagging it so you know.
You're an archaeologist, John.
No.
That's your job.
What you need to do, Tim, let's close this bit off. What you need to do is go and look at what's been said in the letter from Kent Heritage, which is on the Ashford site where your application sits. Okay, is there anything else we want to raise on 20th Street that Tim's not got anything to say? Okay, we'll be discussing that when we return to the main council meeting. And the third one, is anyone here from One Buds Cottages?
Yeah.
Hello.
Good evening. Thank you for the invite. Yeah, I'm Douglas Go. I live there, been living there for about 4 years now. Love living here, great village. We simply want to put in for a detached garage with a small granny annex at the back. a one bedroom, just simply so we can house our family. So our in-laws, my in-laws. So that's it really. If there's any questions or
Does
not?
anyone want to ask Mr. Gare anything?
Straightforward.
No,
Yeah.
no.
You also own number 3? You've just put...
I moved
Yeah.
from number 3. I used to live at number 3.
Right, you put a planning application in there, yeah?
That I brought it with planning permission
Right.
originally. The gentleman that you met on that a little while ago was actually my son.
Right, okay.
So he bought my house at number 3 and I moved to number 1.
Right.
So
No.
yeah,
It's a family road now.
not quite, but you know, we're working on it.
You're working on it.
We've got 4 children, so you know. Yeah. Okay. All
Right.
right. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you for that. Does anyone else want to raise anything else? Were you going to say something?
Yes, some months ago, Melvin Smith, who lives right at the end of the stocks, had a problem with youngsters firing ball bearings and catapults all around there. They went on to the top of the reservoir building and they called the police. Nothing ever happened. As you know, they're moving around. They've started shooting at the parish, at the sign at the top of the road, and we've had one in our back garden.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I have a look at that? So it's exactly the same as I found one somewhere walking. So
Yes.
Yeah.
they are using, which actually are lethal weapons.
They can take your eye out, take your teeth out,
Kill you
from
if they hit you in the right place.
Yeah,
It's quite a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
yes,
And heavy.
15 millimetres.
Okay, thank you for reporting that, Phil. I can tell you that Kent Police have moved on a bit. I mean, I'm not, because I'm not chairing the CALP at Ashford anymore. I don't go to the 6 monthly meetings, but I've heard feedback at the bi-monthly meetings at Ashford. Kent Police used to be kind of, yeah, it's very difficult. We can only do a stop and search for a catapult if we have evidence that they're using it and things like that. They've stepped up a bit more and they're saying, okay, they recognise the danger, they are more willing to, they certainly seize them if they find them being used. They've pointed out it's illegal to be firing them at any wild animals, which of course they also do, and that they will, you know, act on reports. So they're, I'm afraid it's not much, so we know we don't see a policeman here very often, or policewoman, but they are at least, it's a small step, they are at least getting more conscious. And it's not just Ashford, by the way, Kent,
Oh, I'm sure.
Kent and Ashford.
Yeah.
Catapults are becoming a problem.
Yeah.
And as Mervyn has just said, a ball bearing that size coming off of a decent catapult could do serious damage.
May I ask for you?
If that was fired from a musket, it would kill you.
Yeah.
But a catapult is not exactly that far short of a musket.
Sure.
We live in the house at the start of Forge Meads, the house on the right, as you go up into Forge Meads, and that was in our back garden.
And I think it's all in that.
I regularly see lads over the road from where I live, which is down by the Swan,
Yeah.
shooting at pigeons up in the trees.
Yeah.
Do you?
They know they're not supposed to be doing it, but
I've experienced the same in the last 10 days with shooting, and I've seen 3 ball bearings. I think it's coming from the next door, whichever end at the moment.
Next door.
Well, the Poplar Farm at the moment, there's been some work going on there completing it, and there's been also some youngsters around causing some difficulty.
Would you like to get hold of our neighbourhood PC, our official neighbourhood PC now, and say that there's been an upsurge reported of catapults? And you're talking about what, a 15 mil you said?
15 mil, roughly the same size.
15 mil ball, which is, as Mervyn says,
It's quite a heavy ball.
oh yeah, absolutely. If that hit you and went through your skull, you'd know about it.
Yeah.
Well, it would certainly kill a
Well,
small child.
you wouldn't know about it, but you'd be lying on the floor.
Well, yeah, with your brains hanging out. Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
May I suggest, Joe, that when you write to the local police constable, that you actually ask him for his plan. What's he going to do about it? Because we've reported this in the past.
Yes.
Well, you say that, but the problem is we report the stuff and it sort of goes into the system, but nothing seems to come out. And I think, you know, the fact that they have allocated a neighbourhood policeman, I think we're it's legitimate. We're entitled to ask them, what are you going to do about it? So that was what I meant by that.
We can go further than that. The whatever they call themselves, community safety unit part,
Yeah.
the beat officers,
Yeah.
rather than the response officers, different part of the police in Ashford. They actually have 3 sections now. One is the one that is, you know, we've got our man, there's a handful just around, each with several parishes. There's another lot that look after schools particularly, and there's a third lot which are supposed to be the problem solvers, who will pick up on particular issues and try and figure out what to do about them to solve them, because they've got more time, they can focus rather than, oh, what's come up this time, what's come up that time. And I think maybe it needs to be, we should consider asking him to see if he would talk to the inspector and passing it on, because there's an inspector and a sergeant over it all. And the other thing is, perhaps you would like to put it into your part of the CSU in Ashford.
Well, I was going to say, I'm quite happy to
Push
speak
it
to
that way,
the.
because it will be Ashford, it won't be just Wittersham.
I'm quite happy to speak to the commissioner. If you don't get a response from PC later, we can easily take it to the commissioner, who will probably expedite matters.
Indeed. Well, the PCC is very much on things at the minute.
You were even selected.
I don't see them anymore because I don't go to the 6 months as I used to.
I have arranged for Darren to come to
There's
our
been no
PC cottage
straight
on the 12th of June. So that will go out.
So that won't be then. So if anyone wants to know, that PC, if he doesn't get sent on other duties, he might be here on the 10 till 12 on the 12th of June.
12th of June.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Anything else to be raised by members of the public? Can I then close the public session? Yeah, okay, that's done. Right, back to the council meeting. Everyone is very welcome and entitled to stay and listen, but you can't talk again now. Thank you very much. So we're going to confirm or discuss the minutes of the last meeting. Tim,
Yes.
before you shoot, I've been trying to get hold of you, but I gather you were abroad somewhere at a wedding or something. I've sent you an email and left you a message or two on your phone. Yeah. So if you just come back to me when you
I haven't heard from you for some while.
Sorry?
I haven't heard from you for some while. When's that?
Okay, I'll double check the email I'm using, but...
Yeah, no, I haven't had
Oh, anyway, I knew you'd been away, so I'll just mention.
Is there a problem?
You okay?
Let me hold that scene. Yes, I'm sorry, I do have problems.
Sorry.
Is there a problem?
No, I understand.
No, sorry, I do have this.
Um,
That chair.
We'll do it out because we've got the council meeting going. Just deal with it outside, but if you get hold of me tomorrow or Thursday or something, that'll be good. Thanks very much. Bye.
It's just, I
Right.
have a...
Can I just ask then, please, are we happy with the minutes?
Couple of things.
I've spotted note instead of.
Yes, I've got that one.
Yeah.
No. 4803 planning applications under stocks file. We've got councillors agreed to support this application twice.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't spot that.
That
was the echo.
Okay.
And 4805 under correspondence A, we seem to have got an extra it on the end of a sentence. Pay any cheques received into this it.
4805A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the penultimate sentence in that section.
Oh yes, with this it, yes. Couldn't see for looking. Okay, need a new typist. So, all those have been corrected, so I can... everyone happy for me to now... I know. Everyone happy with me doing this?
Yes.
That as well.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay, so that's the minutes. We're making good progress after 40 minutes. So the Swan update is on the agenda, so in matters arising, so I don't think we need to discuss it at this point. Sports club lease update. I would just suggest the AGM is in this room at 6:30 Thursday this week. So unless anyone's got something burning now, if they come along then, they'll be able to ask the people who actually know what's going on, and find out. Okay?
I'm not getting an answer.
All true. I heard a mumble at the back. The land fronting St John the Baptist Church update. This has been rather interesting, as Yvonne is aware. I'm not sure, did you pass things around to everyone? I can't remember. This is the no man's land in front of the church.
Yes.
At the last meeting, I suggested that we might ask Kent Archives at the main Kent Library in Maidstone whether they had any information, and I was delegated to put something together for that, which I did, and Yvonne sent it off. And we've got a response flooding in.
Yes.
We know now more about that land in 1032 than we do in 2025. It has been all round the houses. At one stage it was only a bit of it, I think it was a bit bigger than this, but it had to have King Canute's permission to be sold from someone to someone else or passed on. It's all been part of the manor of Wittersham in the old days. And they have advised us, which will be Yvonne, to get hold of the Sussex archive where we believe some papers have gone from the Wittersham Manor for reasons that seem to have been a bit obscure. It seems as though some of them were kept at Rye and then went off to Sussex.
Yes.
Anyway,
Can I ask a question?
Go
on. I'm sort of quite confused about it, I have to be honest, because of all the toing and froing and which land is which. But one of the things I think as a parish council we need to be clear on, what's our point of arrival? What are we actually, if it all goes according to what we think we want, what does it look like in however many months' time?
I've asked that question before.
Yeah, I know. but if I actually asked everyone individually and you couldn't hear what the answer was, I think it might be slightly different. I'm a bit confused. I kind of think we ultimately need that parking space to be looked after. It's a real mess, it's a disgrace. The pathway, in spite of some people saying it's not a danger, and other people, we've had three accidents and they only sort of fall over and hit their head and die, and then all of a sudden it's, well, I suppose we should have really fixed it. But the fact is that this rumbles on and on and on and on, and I think as parish council we need to be clear about what we actually want. What does it look like in the future? And yes, you're right, you have asked about it in the future, but and John and Alan are not here, but even so, I do think that we need to be clear about what we want. What does good look like?
Issues?
Well, I'm just thinking of the space. You're right, well, at least two, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 issues. But the way I look at it is, if I'm looking down bird's eye view, we've got the wall.
Yeah.
Church is one, yard is one side, which is our responsibility. And I say that was the tree roots. And then the other side, you've got a pathway,
that's right.
Which does that go back to King Canute? But probably.
Well, it's
and then you've
KCC.
got a rough area that people have parked on for many, many years. It's got degraded over the years, and it'll get worse and worse and worse. And I just think that it doesn't look good. It doesn't reflect. It's dangerous. And as a parish council, we need to be clear about what we think. Whoever owns it, we need to have a plan for the outcome. And personally, I think the path should be renovated. And there are people who can do that. And the area where people park, it's high time that was tarmacked over and proper parking spaces were laid out.
Although the church said they don't want that. But it's not
I'm
there.
talking about the parish council now. I'm not wearing a church.
And as for the path, of course, that is KCC's. That's definitely, they acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But they seem to acknowledge that there's no need to do anything about it.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's definitely them rather than us is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So,
but do we decide to take the whole thing, make an offer to take the whole thing over, right, and take responsibility for
well,
it?
I think the path is, as far as they're concerned, the path is highway or something similar.
Yeah,
I think it's highway. So that's definitely theirs.
Yeah.
We
But they could cede it to us.
Yeah, I don't know.
The only problem is that we're responsible for the churchyard, and
Yeah.
they say it's the roots from the
Oh, yeah.
tree.
That's
that are
right.
upsetting
But it's
the
not.
heart.
It's not just. Yeah, it
Well,
could
we
be the
may well
case.
come- we may well come
And,
back
and
to
we're
that.
going to have to sort that out anyhow. But notwithstanding that, the pathway, I mean, it's bizarre that you've got a pathway at highways, then an area that nobody seems to want to know, and then a highway. And there's this no man's land bit, and I think that ultimately, this personal view is that we ought to try and consolidate it, because it's never going to get properly maintained, it's never going to
Without
look
it.
smart without it. We're just going to wander all over the place for years to come, and it's going to take a really serious accident for anything to happen if we don't do anything.
I understood, Paul. I think if you unpick it, we have got to the point where the red brick is KCC's. I take the point that at the moment they're reluctant to do anything about it, and I take the point that that is the issue of the roots. But okay, the roots can be looked into as to whether that is a genuine concern, and if it is, what we have to do about it if we want to. KCC can be pushed. If necessary, they can probably be encouraged with money, although it shouldn't be our affair any more than the 40 mile an hour in Peeling Quarter was. But that's where we are, because they say they won't do things on highway without Parish Council's paying. And now they can get away with it. The no man's land, I totally agree with Paul that it could be improved, whether tarmacked or not. The church warden has said that's not what they want, but you know, if it's ours rather than theirs. The reason we started going into the ownership and all the rest of it was because if we are going to spend money on the no man's land, we need to make sure that we have got the rights and nobody else. So they've asked Kent to confirm that they definitely do not see themselves as having any rights at all. We would want to get that in writing, I think, but at least we know, I mean, properly, formally. But at the mean, they've said certainly we want nothing to do with it. And to be honest, what we found from the old book of Wittersham School and the Kent archive is they're right. It really isn't anything to do with KCC. It's obscure as to why they've got the pathway, the red pathway, but they have, and they acknowledge it, and it's on their map, so they've got it. So Paul says, what are we actually aiming for? I don't think we've decided what we're aiming for, but we know that if we do aim for anything, and Paul says, you know, we like it tidied up, we ought to make sure that we are free to do it. Ideally, because we get, I mean, this was where I started a few months ago, as you recall. I said we really ought probably to say, okay, we would try to register that piece of land with a land registry, and if they register it our ownership, then it's ours. But we do then have responsibility, and it will be insurable and all the rest of it. What is happening at the moment is that it is, I think, in some ways it's legally obscure because it's been donated around within this Wittersham Manor, which doesn't exist anymore, unless you count Wittersham Courthouse. And I think one of the questions we probably have to ask is of Julia and Didier, is it, Sabine, to say, do you believe you've got any old manorial rights with your house? But it also, we know from the library examination, the archive, that they say that it was, what was the word used? They literally use this word, it was wasteland of the manor, which means it was, and she actually says something like, she doesn't use tantamount, but it's not dissimilar to common.
Common land. That would be my present definition.
Common. And also we know that right now, as Kent's County Council has said to us, because it's been open for decades for people to do with what they will, no one, even if they owned it, could put a fence around it and exclude everyone. So we're just trying to get our ducks in a row to be able to take the decision that Paul's asking about, which we haven't actually taken yet.
But I think ultimately Paul's right. You know, we need to
know what we want to do
once
at some point.
Yes. And
we have the money. We have the money to do anything.
Yes.
Pretty much. Right, nice to see you, Merlin. We've got the money, but like I said before, the church warden's view, which is not conclusive, there's a PCC and all the rest of it, and a faculty, well, not a faculty because it's outside the churchyard, but his view is that they don't feel that they would want it tarmacked. Although I did suggest that earlier because I thought you'd never get the maximum number of cars in without having lines on it, and you can't do lines on stones.
I think they would have difficulty raising money if it became available.
You think we'd have difficulty raising money?
Church.
The church.
Oh, the church.
The church is skinned.
Oh yeah. And
Yes.
the church don't want to buy it.
I know they don't want to, but they want to use it. So the question of less than limbo.
Oh, yeah, well, of course they want to have
Yes.
a rector and a deputy rector space.
Church warden.
And a church warden space.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
But yes, but I mean, I think we need to move on to the stage whereby, has anybody got it? If not,
Yeah.
Are we able to make a decision on the tree root investigation?
I think that we.
yes.
Was that somewhere else?
Yes, because that,
Oh, okay.
well, that's within this,
The general.
within this bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it is two separate.
Yeah.
KCC path, tree roots.
Yeah.
And then we've got this, but before we can register it, we've got to check the archive. Kent lady said we've got to check with Sussex as to this missing piece.
So on the
before we can
land, the
register.
next step is to check the Sussex archives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I only just had about that.
Probably which, when the decision's been made, we may or may not be able to then to do something with the roots, technically.
Well, we can do something with
We
the
can
roots.
do something with
That's
the
in
roots
the-
now.
Entirely
That's
different.
in the churchyard.
From the churchyard,
Yeah,
but
that's
not under the brickwork.
We could have somebody look at the tree now.
No, yeah.
We're not interested
If we
in
vote for that.
we're not interested in the roots under the brickwork. They're interested in them not being connected to the tree. So in other words, if necessary, we'd have to dig down by the wall,
Yes.
hoping that that doesn't tip the wall over to chop them off. Making sure that it's not likely to kill the tree.
This is KCC's point. He says it's the tree roots, but if he lifted, he would need to know whether he could take those tree roots out before he could do any work.
And not get new ones, ideally.
But he needs to know whether it's safe to take tree roots out until
And
he
we
has
need a
somebody.
professional to tell.
Exactly.
It needs
Which we need to pay for.
Yes.
Yes.
Online.
We agree, I think we would be willing to pay for it.
Online.
Get on with it.
Online it says that a lime tree has a taproot and that the lateral roots are quite thin and fibrous and come out typically, not always, at a depth of about 3 to 6 foot. Now, I reckon that sounds to me that it's fine, but it's probably not quite true because something's upset in the path.
Yeah.
But if they're only fibrous roots, you've got a taproot and fibrous roots, our tree warden is sitting there and he can't speak at the minute. Unless I adjourn the meeting.
Used to be.
The fact is, yeah, used to be, retired. But the fact is that if you've got that taproot and you've got a lot of fibrous roots coming out over some distance, then I get the feeling as an engineer, not a botanist, that the top bit in one direction doesn't matter too much. It may be the wall is more vulnerable than the tree.
Well, it could well be at that stage.
So there we are. Anyway, we're making progress. That's all I really wanted to say. We've hit some pay dirt from the library.
Well, we're not making progress
No,
on the
exactly.
path, Jeremy. We're
We
just
need
going
to
round and round in circles.
Oh, okay.
We need a decision.
So I'd like to propose that we get somebody to look at the tree.
Indeed, that's fine. That's fine.
Yes.
Does anyone agree that? We're all
I'm
on for that. Yes.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
No problem about that.
No.
If we need the decision, you've got the decision. Right, that's the land front in St John the Baptist. Next one is the ABC Caretaker Scheme update. I don't know, did you copy that to everybody?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, so you've seen that Ashford, having decided that they could definitely do all the work that they pay us 19,000 for, could do it for 10,000. But if somebody decided they couldn't, it'd be 12.5.
12.5, that's what I...
And that as a special offer, they're willing to split the difference for next year. They're paying us the full amount this year. They'll split the difference next year and give us 16,000 if we want to carry on, and then we'll be on 12.5 after that. but by the time we're on 12.5, it will have had the inflation rate added to it on this April.
Yeah.
But we've asked them to split that into villages.
Indeed, because we've got to let the other parishes know where they stand.
And they've not come back yet.
No, it was only yesterday, I think.
Oh,
It was
We've done
yesterday.
this,
Yeah,
yeah.
I only got the letter.
But they were asked to split it down about 3 months ago and never did.
Yeah.
Now they've just got a different number to split down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, frankly, that they have never done the work to split it
And
down.
I'm sure they haven't.
That's when we were there.
I
That's
know,
what
I
we
know,
asked
yeah.
for. That's what I said I needed.
Indeed.
Without stating the obvious, I think that the retention of our current caretaker is vital. I mean, he does such a great job, we get great value. Who knows what the future will hold, and Alf has indicated he might not want to work here for the next 25, 35 years. As long as we can, I just feel that if ABC take it over, it'll be one of the first cuts. You know, once they take something over, they can then cut it. And as long as we can maintain some form of core integrity that we get money, so it almost sounds Trumpian, but if we can do a deal, 50% of the money to maintain a full 100% service is better than nothing. So I think there's some
They've
skillful...
already sort of said it would be pared down, haven't they?
We'll see where we get.
Oh, yes,
to.
yes,
Yeah.
that would be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do also bear in mind that even if we scrape through with Ashford at this point, in Ashford has only got 3 years left.
Yes.
And let's cross
And
that
it
bridge
might,
when
and
we
it
get
might
to it.
indeed, we have to cross the bridge, but the bridge is there. And it might go in either direction. It might be that all they want to do is get shot at stuff
Yeah.
and cut money. Of course, that's very likely. The other side of it is they may want to get shot of it by saying, you do it.
Yep. Well.
And we may, and it's only may, the government aren't going to put money in our pocket, but they may very well say, you've got more obligations and it's up to you to raise the precept to pay for them.
The alternative is that we actually apply for a grant outside of government from some of the trusts and foundations, which, because it's a part of the integral part of village life. And so you've got all sorts of different trusts and foundations who are very committed. And I'm thinking, the name has escaped me, but the people like Collier Ferguson and the other trust foundation that was supporting us in our pre-COVID Swan bid, where we got several thousand just to put the initial maps there. So there are...
Even for running costs.
Yeah, and if we prepare a case that basically is not just about we want Alf to stay, but actually overall support of ordinary people in the village, the quality of village life, the maintenance of village services. There are a number of charities, not just in Kent, but nationally, who have trust and foundations that will actually support something like that. We have a specific project, and then the first prize is you go for multi-year funding, which is 3 to 5 years. And then by which stage we're going to be in some form of unitary authority or equivalent.
Sure.
And I think we go right back to basics. Because don't forget, Wittersham were the pioneers in the whole of Kent. If ever there's a good example of social change and social impact, you know, and we mustn't forget where we started this from. And there will be people who say, you know what, every village needs some sort of support, some sort of help. And Wittersham with a flagship in there, it's slightly got lost in the mist of time. So I think as much as we can maintain it now, and then in the future as we apply the money.
Yeah.
There will be a question as to whether we can, because there's
At the moment,
a big
it's running at
financial
a
gap.
loss, isn't it?
It's running at a
Discuss
little
that
loss at
now?
the moment.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Can we discuss that now or later?
Well, we've got
We've got the budget later.
Okay.
But it maintains Stone and Canardington, doesn't it, at the moment?
And Wareham.
Yeah.
If I may, I saw an earlier draft of this letter in confidence and negotiated for the more graduated decline in funding. They wanted to issue. I think you're thinking along the right lines, and that it buys you time while Ashford wraps itself up, which gives you time to do exactly as Paul suggested and look at other avenues.
Yeah.
That's the sort of view, because otherwise they were planning to go more sharply.
Yeah, well, they originally said just 10,000. Thank you.
Okay, are we clear on that then?
I think so. The working parties, which is our next part. A is the village caretaker. In the past year, that was John and me, with Yvonne obviously. Does anyone want to change that at all? No? Finance was also John and me. Does anyone else want to be doing that? No? Open Spaces has been Alan, I think.
Yep.
And was there someone else on Open Spaces? No? Highways, you've done that for a long time, Paul. I think you still do it.
Well, happy to carry on.
Public Rights of Way is Sally.
Sally?
And Cemetery and Churchyard is Sue. Okay, right. To elect 2 representatives to attend the CALC meetings, it has been John and me, with more emphasis on me than John, but we should be elected for that. Are people?
Are you happy to continue being involved?
For now, anyway, yeah. Sure. I still go, yeah.
So you will be one and John would go as well?
Yeah, he does come sometimes.
We have to,
Yeah.
you know.
So, okay, the 2 of us are elected for that then, okay. To elect 3 representatives to the Village Hall Management Committee. Okay, we elected Sally last time, but we also, or the time before even, but we then pulled back on the grounds of the problem
Yes.
with liabilities. Now I have had a little tiny window of a breakthrough, but I'm afraid it's only a tiny one. I was pushing Mike Apps, who's now the chairman of the Village Hall, months back, that's what he needed to do, and he wanted to look into that. And he wanted me to talk to the trustees. Then he changed his mind, and because they were panicking over Martin's Law, where they were going to have to put tons of effort into fulfilling their obligations under this law, which is the one that came out of the Manchester Arena bombing, where all places that people gather have to do all sorts of, kind of counter-terrorism, Anyway, it's just changed.
It's only a case of having training in the policy.
It's changed anyway. It's now
changed,
only for places that have more than about 250 people coming, so it doesn't apply.
Right.
So now he's free of all of that. So I saw him last week and I said, oh, now you can do the CIO. No, he doesn't want to do the CIO now. Paul Hutchison is particularly, he said, I think Paul has said much the same to me, doesn't feel it's necessary. Mike has said that it only applies to trustees and members of the committee and not necessarily trustees. I think that's a bit open to question.
Yes, it is.
I mean, trustees are registered on the Charity Commission website, but they should also be all of the members of the committee. I don't think they've got I doubt that they've got the opportunity to say there are some who are and some who aren't, other than by administrative slip of the what's it. Anyway, he was then worrying also about money, because they've only got £2,000 or £3,000 in the account. So I said, well, hold on a minute, you've got all that money from the government during COVID. And he said, oh yeah, but that's all kept in, reserves for when we've got to do this and when we've got to do that. The last thing was, I said, look, the new version of ACRK, Kent Acre, has been working. They've just about started the Village Hall advisory service again. And I believe they've gone far further now, both from the national end, ACRE with a new chief executive, and the Kent one with the chief executive's interim, to get templates in place, where the templates would enable them all to set themselves up as CIOs, to make it as easy as possible. I think they possibly still need a solicitor. They may have a panel solicitor who would do it, or, but I'm hoping that costs can be brought down. Because the other thing they say is, oh, look, we can insure the risks. And I always say, insurance is always a bit of a chance. You can pay a premium, do you get the claim?
No.
So I'm hoping that they can be pushed in that direction. One thing that I just float here for the council, and we're being entitled to do it if we wished to, would be, of course, to help them with the costs of doing it. But we'd have to make sure that if we were doing that it was reasonable that they should be asking us and that they shouldn't be spending their own money. But one way or another, honestly, I think they should be a CIO. I think it's just It's silly otherwise. And we don't know if they lose other trustees, not just Sally, who would bring a lot to it, but maybe other trustees say, well, I'm not going to do it, if there's that risk.
I suggest that it's debatable whether if you're a representative you become a trustee, and it's the trustees who are actually liable, and not the committees, because you could have all sorts of committees and subcommittees. Personally, I would, it sounds a bit sad, but I would steer clear of it. I don't think we should elect a representative for the Village Hall Committee at this moment until they've got their act together. What I think we can do is give a standing invite to the Village Hall Chairman to come to the monthly Parish Council meeting and give us an update.
That's a good idea. Good idea. Okay, we're certainly not in a position to put Sally, or ask Sally to go on the committee. You're absolutely right there. That's what we decided last year.
That's a sensible way of moving forward.
And, I think that...
I think as well,
we should have one there, but they're
saying
stopping
Sally. We vote somebody on at the time.
Yes.
Rather than it's Sally.
It's just that you were...
Yes.
You were willing, and I said I don't think you ought to unless we are willing to stand behind you, and then we debated that and decided that actually what we would do is we'd look at the insurance and this and that, and we never got to a satisfactory position. It doesn't have to be you, but I'm sure you bring a lot to it if you did. Okay, where am I now? To review. Now, my view is that we should be deferring the review of standing orders and financial regulations until John is back to chair the meeting himself. I've been heavily involved as chairman in doing both of them, and I don't think that you should just...
Very sensible. Yes.
Do you mean I've read them all this afternoon for nothing?
No, you're now the elected expert on them. Don't spoil your Sally.
To review the inventory of land, assets and office equipment, we've got the asset register from Yvonne.
My only query is there's no benches on there from Roger Parker.
Mr. Parker.
Oh, good point.
No.
And I donated 3, didn't he?
Yes, although one is
One, yes.
there, which is theirs.
Yeah.
Now.
Did you?
Well, we didn't pay for them.
No, but,
but we haven't paid for
most
lots
of these
of other
things,
things
that's
on
right.
there.
That's right. The question is whether we regard ourselves as owning them.
Yeah, one waiting to go into the playground in Ashford. Playground.
Well, it's a point that Yvonne can contemplate when she has a moment to contemplating.
Jeremy, I had a couple of questions on it. If I can't see it, that might be just my eyesight. But where's the village green? I don't mean literally where it is, by the way. But where is it on our assets?
Village green.
Do we not have a village green?
Well, we have the village green.
The village green is now, it's called the Memorial Garden.
Okay, fair enough. But it's not called the village green.
No, because the village green is over owned by Ashford, by Jubilee
That's
Field.
right.
So the main point is, though, that we don't have an ownership of the village green as an asset.
Which village green do you mean?
Well, that's the whole point.
The one by Jubilee Field.
Yeah. The village green
is owned by Ashford.
Right.
And we've been asking Ashford to give it to us for years,
Yes.
and they've never got round to thinking about it.
Okay. Well,
They own the whole... That whole thing by Woodland View and Jubilee Field,
That's right.
all of that
That's
land
right.
is theirs, and they won't...
Well, I'm not suggesting for this meeting we try and resolve that,
No.
and I do think that it's, as long as you and I have been together and combined and more to Sue, it's been an unresolved issue.
Oh, it
We
is.
lumber on from year after year after year, and I think as a village we should own the village green.
This is what we've been talking about.
We've been talking about it for years.
I know, but I'm just raising it to refresh it.
If or when we
And
get
the
it,
other question,
it'll be down.
the other question purely out of interest is, what's an air skier?
Oh,
You
yes.
don't go up on the...
The air skier is one of the adult fitness equipment.
Oh,
Have you not
okay.
been up there?
No,
He's-
Well, you need to refresh your memory.
You're probably breaking neck, Paul, don't go.
I get worn out on the Monday morning. Yeah.
Right, is everyone happy
Thank
with
you.
the list?
Yeah.
Which you'll see. I mean, it's a bizarre thing. Nothing gets depreciated until we throw it away. So although it says £83,417.37p, that's what we paid years ago, and it's probably worth £5 bob.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've done that, we've reviewed that. Good. Confirmation of arrangements for insurance cover in respect of all insured risks. Now, there are two bits to this. One is that Yvonne has got to pay the premium, which we're going to come to further down the agenda, I think, because that's running out at the end of this month, isn't it?
1st of June.
1st of June. Yes. The other thing is that I think that obviously it'll be, unless things are done very quickly, it'll be paid on the current basis. But again, I think I put a lot of time, relatively, with Yvonne into it when we moved to this policy. I think that it should be John rather than me leading on the decision to say it's all fine again. I have no particular worries about it. I haven't gone through it in detail. I find insurance extremely complicated and difficult. At the time I asked quite a lot of questions with their liaison person, but they've restructured it a bit now, and according to Yvonne, who I was talking to the other day on it, it looks as though, by curiosity, it was an Aviva policy that was placed by the brokers that were in partnership with NALC. And it was specially devised, this policy, we were told. Yeah. You've now said that it's actually being underwritten by ecclesiastical, which is bizarre in the sense that it's ecclesiastical who were underwriting policies for Cayman Co., one of which was the Wolvenden one that never paid out.
That's right.
Now, you know, the brokers is one thing and the policy is another, but it's the underwriter that ultimately writes the cheque. Ecclesiastical on the top. So that causes me a little bit of anxiety.
Well, you mentioned this last month about the one from Wolvenden.
Yeah, but I didn't realise then until more recently that it was ecclesiastical that had popped up on this. So, maybe we need to talk to. I did talk to NALC at the time when I went there, but they didn't really want to discuss it at all. I called them.
But there was some changeover then too.
The only other place that we can consider that I know of is Zurich.
So that's one that's
they were talking about dropping out of the local authority business, parish council business, and then I gather they went back into it again, or they didn't just drop out after all.
But does that mean that without our knowledge it was transferred over?
The underwriters.
The underwriter.
And they changed names. It used to be BH.
Indeed, it's now called Clear. I mean, for all I know, they may have sold off the client list.
Yes, that would be one of my assumptions.
So that is a loose end that Yvonne, I think, needs to investigate as to exactly who's who. As I say, the only other one I know, and I did talk to the head of Calc at the time, the last head of Calc. There were the three. There was Cayman Co., which used to work with Calc. There was the Birmingham lot, who worked with NALC and were underwritten by Aviva with this special policy. And they were very helpful when we first moved to them. We spent time on the phone with the lady for quite a lot. And thirdly, we know that Zurich is in it. And the only opening that I have to knowing what Zurich does, other than that I know they're a very big insurer, is that Mary Philo, who lives in this village but is clerk for Iden and Beckley and Pet Levels, or Pet. She I think, she certainly did it for Iden, and then maybe the other two, I don't know. She would at least tell us where Zurich was, in terms of whether she thinks they're all right or not. But we're getting quite close, we've only got a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So I think that's one for John to pick up on, but Yvonne obviously to do some work in the meantime. It's always falling out of the pocket. The last one used to be tighter. Thank you. To review interactions with residents and the public. That's the policy that I wrote some years ago. Everyone happy with that?
Yes. Yes.
To review the council's procedures for handling requests made under the Freedom of Information Act. Now, this is something that Yvonne reports on because we don't have a written policy. It's all legislated anyway, but you usually tell us what you do.
Well, only that if anyone asks if it's reasonable, I do have a list in my book of things that we don't have to give them, but most of it is all reasonable. I've ever haven't had anything under those words for some time now.
Do you think the question is, should we have a written policy or procedure?
Should we or not? That's the question.
Yes,
We've got a procedure, which is the acid test, and I think that the other thing that sometimes comes in.
We do have a procedure. Well, we have
with the clerk,
yes,
yes, because we've delegated to the clerk. But in the past, we've had what would come under the term vexatious behaviour. And that is such a grey area, and I'd be happy that we delegate that to the parish clerk to make a decision based on her experience there.
Okay.
And if anyone then wants to challenge it, we escalate it elsewhere.
Yeah.
To the appropriate authorities.
But
I think we're in good shape.
Leave it as it is. Okay.
I think we're in good shape in that.
The council's policy for dealing with press or media and media. Now, I think this is slightly confused, but Yvonne may have it clearer in her head. Last year or the year before, Paul, you did a social media best practice guide.
That's right.
And that, as my recollection, was to be a kind of a sub-item of the policy we already had for dealing with press and media. So we had a policy for dealing with press and media, and then we had the social media best practice guide that you just sent me today.
Yes.
So the first thing is we've got to review the communications and media policy, I think, which we've got. And when I looked on the date, it hadn't been done, or else it had been done and I hadn't updated it in my file.
Well, only in as much as last time.
Please see. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We added, please see social media best practice guide for further information on the first paragraph of the introduction.
So that's good.
So it's...
Are people happy with that? Because that's
I thought it was very clear at the time.
Indeed. Okay, that's all right. Now, that's the main one, which we're happy with. Then the policy for dealing with the social media, which Paul did, I just went through that and I came up with a couple of little tiny things, which I can suggest. If anyone else has got anything, please tell me. First thing, I think in number one, the guide, we've got Twitter and other microblogging sites, and obviously we'd say X brackets Twitter. I mean, that's just something the world has changed, yeah? I would suggest. The second thing was just a typo, really, I think. 7 little I, post any information, this is what you're not supposed to do. Post any information that may knowingly be deemed libel, and I assumed it was libelous, but just missed the last bit off. The third one was in paragraph 10. Paul, I would say libelous rather than libel. I mean, just as it deemed libelous. I mean, I suppose both of them work grammatically, but we don't usually say it in that way.
One's an action and one's a thing.
Could be knowingly be deemed a libel, you could have, yeah.
Well, no, just libel. You don't
Just
know a
libel.
libel. Libel is...
Do you think libel's all right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we'll leave it as it is. I'm willing, I don't mind. Third thing you mentioned in paragraph 10, councillors' views posted in any capacity in advance of matters to be debated by the council at the council or committee meeting may constitute, this is if you've posted something on, this is what we had mentioned already today, may constitute predisposition, predetermination or bias. Now predetermination, very much it's a legislative point. Yep. Predisposition, I looked up and I wasn't sure if it was telling us anything different. Predisposition, I mean, we've got predetermination, which is the legal one. That's what's in the law, Localism Act. Predisposition, I wasn't sure if it told us something different. And then all bias, I don't know.
Predisposition is a feeling or a thought, and predetermination is a decision.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it is interesting that what our good friend mentioned about our chair, in his absence, had posted his comments online. I've also done that today, but I've done it. I've ticked the boxes as a member of the public, not as a councillor, not as a parish councillor or anything. And I think it's important when we do post something regarding planning or anything else actually online, it's very clear that this is not the view
Yes.
of any of us as a councillor or
As an
parish
individual.
council. And I'm assuming John would have ticked the boxes.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did.
Public.
I think he did.
But when they brought in the Localism Act and said that something like making known your views in advance is not necessarily evidence of predetermination, I can't remember where the wording applied or where it appeared rather, but as I recall, if there was any kind of extension of that being mentioned, maybe by the Committee of Standards in Public Life, I don't know, it was basically saying councillors are entitled to argue for their views. If you're not careful, councillors would turn up at Ashford Borough Council or Kent County Council meeting and they put the resolution and they all vote for it or against it with having previously not said a word about what they thought. No discussion, no nothing, because it's predetermination. And they said, look, this is getting ridiculous. It was the council lawyers that got it into a complete mess, I think. Oh, it might be predetermination. And they said, no, it isn't. You can have your views in advance, but of course you must still make your decision.
A good example of that, although it's never seemed to have affected Wittersham, is if you actually had contested parish council elections and you decided as a councillor that you were going to back X or Y and you campaigned for them. That could be argued as pre.
It was all silly.
But
good point.
I think we're in good shape.
Number 11 looks to me to duplicate number 14 in different words.
Jeremy, what's the name of that party?
This is the Social Media Best Practice Guide.
I haven't got that.
No, it's something that we did it last meeting or last year or the year before.
We should have that.
I'd like to say it was a limited edition of the collector's item. I'm not quite sure that's true.
Anyway, 11 and 14 are basically saying the same thing in different words. That's something you might like to just merge them together. They're not exactly the same. It's not just a cut and paste or copy and paste, but they're basically saying the same thing. And if you do have any views according to this, if anyone with concerns regarding content placed on those social media, no, he was only telling us here, that denigrate parish councils. Right. So that's just tiny little amendments, I think. Right. You've done that one. I did suggest to Yvonne this afternoon, there are other things that we have put in the folder or we've done that could go in the folder that are not in this list because this essentially comes from standing orders.
Yeah.
You must do these every year. But we have others and logically we ought to review them. So I've suggested that next month perhaps and then in future, annual meetings, we also review things like approach to risk, its mitigation and control, which I wrote 2-3 years ago when we had more money to invest. We've got the policy on co-option of councillors that I can think of, and maybe one or two others, and they all ought to go on this list.
The safeguarding one.
The safeguarding one. They don't take very long. We ought to just make sure we look at them.
It's not a policy, but I think it's a while since we updated it, but Yvonne, you can correct me. The list of emergency contacts.
Oh yeah.
We haven't seen a lot of snow recently. Do the farmers still get a retainer every year for being on the list? I think they do. I don't think they fall off the list, they just get their little payment every year to be on guard to hook up. Oh God, sorry, I'll stand by. You live in the village, you should know the answer to this. Who's your local snowplow? I just think it would be good because, and I was reminded because I saw Pat Homeward walking down the road. I remember years ago she took the talks, didn't she, for that, but she's no longer around. I'm thinking,
Dave Fletcher's
but we just need to update it. I think.
Do.
And then issue it to the councillors.
Right. Okay, good. Another one to do.
Because actually, one of the things that I thought, and this is not holding a torch particularly for, but I thought one of the things that impressed me was Katie Lamb when she got elected. One of the things she did was send everybody out the list of useful contacts.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely.
It was all in one place, and I think we could take a look at that.
Indeed, you're quite right. Yeah, and then someone could also update the long thing I wrote, which George was very unimpressed by, about who did what. Remember? All the members.
Listen, I meant George, not you.
No, I don't get blessed, I only get accused of things.
Well,
Right.
planning.
So we do them next time then, if Yvonne can figure out all of the ones that there are. So planning applications, 20 The Street, the 2-storey rear extension and changes to fenestration. I said I've got a other than accuse me, so I can vote, but I won't, so long as there are enough votes from the others of you.
I had a support from one of the neighbours.
One of the neighbours.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't upset Tim or worry him. It wasn't my intention, but when I read that, I thought, hang on a minute, this is like an open-ended cheque and you can only buy from an approved supplier kind of thing. So maybe you could have a quiet word, I mean, just go in there, because he said, oh well, in that case we won't do it, which is the wrong situation.
You put your finger on an important point, having come upon them in the past in my career, archaeologists.
Or is that the same as people who look at cemeteries to find out whether there's a bird, a bee or a spider living in a tree?
It's not usually dissimilar.
Yeah.
Archaeologists are hungry for work and very expensive.
Yeah.
I don't have any comments on 20th Street.
No, neither do I.
No.
So are people
All in favour?
Yes.
Yeah.
all in favour with one abstention?
Yes.
Good. I did ask Yvonne today, if you get down below 3 votes, but you've got a quorum in attendance, is it a valid vote, or do you have to have at least 3 votes? We didn't find that out. Okay. The last one is One Buds Cottages, the detached garage and annex.
Hang on, we missed the Swan.
Oh.
I know we missed
I was wondering whether we were going to
Freudian.
Yeah.
Okay, the Swan, change of use of a pub to a residential dwelling. Sally mentioned to me earlier, and I also looked, there are just, as of when we looked this afternoon, there were more in support than against on the portal. We heard from the applicant as to, well, he says we didn't hear from him because he wished to ask us questions instead.
Thanks, yeah.
We spent quite a long time on it. Who wants to start us off?
Well, I'll make a couple of comments because I asked him particular questions because I wanted him to have the opportunity of saying his thoughts and his ideas and what have you. I hadn't quite anticipated the need for a heliport, but that's always interesting, isn't it? Well, what resonated with me is that it wouldn't surprise me if Kevin actually commented in favour of opposing, because he came out so strongly as he raised it. The village needs a pub. It's a tragedy if it goes, and he'll probably be listening to this, and the village needs the support of pub, all of which I agree. And nowhere was that the village needs a couple of expensive executive houses on the corner of a busy junction. So I think that in spite of what when he started to get a little agitated, in spite of his personal accusations to you, I think that he was very clear that actually he's not against the village having a pub. He recognises it's the only pub left and is very important, and in his own words, the village needs a pub and it's a tragedy if it goes.
Yes.
I think that the comments that one or two people have made that it was never supported so it proves it's not needed is disingenuous. And I didn't deliberately mention the bit about the food in those pubs that are successful, but there's a clue. None of them can survive purely on local drink sales.
No.
And the fact that he was unsuccessful in attracting a chef doesn't mean to say that other pubs are unsuccessful in attracting a chef.
Well, they managed to do it plainly.
They managed to do it. So all in all, without going on, I would oppose the change of use to a residential dwelling or dwellings.
We'll have a vote in a minute.
Yeah, no, that's it.
That's useful. I didn't get as far as saying it because of the way the responses turned, but I was minded to say that while he feels that he wasn't supported, and as we know he put in the cafe, he had the meal once a week for a bit, which was Thai, but the lady took the profit out of that, he just took the drinks. That was it, up to him. when it started, I used to go along. I was there on the first night, like Paul. I was there maybe a week later. And then I went along every 2 or 3 weeks, and I would go in and I'd buy a pint of Guinness and go out again. And I would talk to Georgia, and I would say, how are you getting on with the restaurant? How are you getting on with the restaurant? How are you getting on with the restaurant? And I was always told, oh, blah, 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 blah. And at one point, after, I don't know how long, they opened in about June, and I think probably about September. About September. Talking to Georgia across the bar, close to her, you know, she's leaning, I'm leaning. And I said, what's happening about the restaurant? And she said to me, and he'll probably tell me I'm a liar, but she said to me, he wasn't there, she said to me, I know this place will never be successful without food. Also, they always told me, the restaurant's coming, the restaurant's coming, the restaurant's coming. And eventually, of course, it did open, but only for breakfast and lunch.
Yeah.
Now, it's all very well to say, oh, well, no one supported them. They themselves said from the beginning, they were going, in fact, when I went to see him, when he first went in and started knocking the upstairs apart and having the bonfire in the yard, I went along and found out, I was walking, I don't know if I was walking the dog or what, but it was morning, I went in there, whoever's owned it, yeah, that's him, so I had a talk with him, and I stayed with him talking for about an hour and a half, hearing Kevin. We went upstairs and looked at what they were doing up there, and we did this and did that, and we talked, as I recall, about the sort of menu choices. I don't really know the menu, but pub food with a couple of things that are a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Not too high, not too low. And to be fair in a way, let's just assume he always intended, I wondered later whether he ever intended to do food, but one way or another, let's assume he did really start off hoping to do food. She made it clear to me she knew she had to do food. You can't then turn that around to say, well, no one supported us, so we closed, because they didn't put out what they said they would, that we would support. I used to go with Nuala and have dinners when it was serving them in raised time. I came in raised time.
But to be fair, we heard something tonight which I hadn't heard before about his cashing in of his personal pension, but then he still didn't have the capital to finish off the kitchen.
That was all news to me because he told me. If
you haven't got a kitchen that's finished off, you can't provide a full service meal.
I've never heard that before, but when I first talked to him, and he'd already paid the 502 for the pub, so that was settled, he told me at length, repeatedly, this is my own money, I've got plenty of money, I can do everything, I don't owe anything to the bank, I can afford to do it, I will be okay. Now, that doesn't have to be true. I'm not saying it's untrue. I'm just saying, just because he said it doesn't make it true. But again, the point being made was he could run with it. I mean, they spent a lot of money. Oh, I tell you something else he told me right at the beginning. That first morning, he said, I don't know if you know, but I've got a very young girlfriend and she wants to have a pub, so I bought her a pub. Let's give Kevin credit for this. He is outspokenly open. He does tell people what he thinks, including tonight. But you can't blame the customers if the offer isn't right. There's a balance between, if he was doing what he needed to do to be a village pub and we still didn't go, he could say, I think, look, the guys, you may say you want a village pub, but I've given you a village pub and you're not coming. But I think what I read from other people, not always, but largely, is village pub has food. Paul said that. I do know people, we all know certainly one of them, and I can name another, but I won't, who say, and they're village people, village is full, they don't go. But they both do go, but they go for the beer. And that's not enough for a lot of the people.
I think the key issue is this whole thing about change of use to residential dwellings, and we have got great news in terms of building affordable housing that's been passed by ABC for Stocks Road. True. And I don't believe that we have a need for executive time, as it's called, four or five bedroom houses, and you'd only get 2 anyhow on that plot, because when Withers Green inquired years ago, Ashford's advice was you wouldn't get 3 on that plot, you'd only get 2. So I'm not sure how the sums work out.
And of course he's asking for change of use to this building, but if he got change of use to this building, he's then made it residential, and he can then say, now can I knock it down?
Well, he'd sell it to a developer. I mean, that's the way, in spite of him saying, I don't need to get the money out, no one would do that.
No.
And we would have a building site there, so whoever lives there would have to put up with, I would suggest, at least a year of heavy construction equipment, lorries, the whole chaos at the top of Swan Street. And residents of Swan Street have had a pretty rough time recently anyhow, with road closures, flooding, all sorts of things. So I'm quite amazed when I hear 1 or 2 people saying, oh no, we really want residential building. Harry Potter's wand isn't available on a local level. It's not going to just happen like that. The disruption and chaos. And also it's we are pragmatic, and we face the fact it's an uphill battle, but it is the last village asset, and if you look at any valuation of a property in a rural community, church, school, village hall, sports field, pub, they're the 5 golden points that affect the value of a house. But the issue here is about change of use to residential.
And the other thing I think to keep in mind, by the way, planning disruption isn't a building disruption.
No, I know, but I'm just talking about people supporting without thinking it through.
I don't think, though, I mean, although the public meeting was well supported, nothing's going to come from within the village. If their pub is going to succeed as a pub, it's going to have to be by finding a buyer from outside the village.
You're sort of right, but don't completely dismiss a small number, a very small number, but plural, of people connected to the village looking at it right now.
Okay, right. And I do think the support for the pub is dwindling. I think there are some people who would like to see it move to residential because they don't want to see it sit there and deteriorate. Given that Kevin repainted the outside last week, so actually he hasn't done himself any favours that way. And the fact that he had a private function there last week as well, I think, perhaps it could be used for that.
All true. The other thing we should keep in mind is that it was registered as an asset of community value. And while ACV in the legislation is essentially to do with giving you the 6 months right to buy, the underlying principle is it's either an asset of community value or it isn't. And if it's an asset of community value, you shouldn't lose it, whether or not someone is willing to buy it. We're trying to keep it as a pub. Now, of course, you could say, well, we're just banging our head on a brick wall, because it won't be a pub just because we wish it to be a pub. Incidentally, just as a little aside, of course, Ashford has never allowed, if indeed there are applications, I don't know, they've never allowed the Crown at Stone to go. And that is not the only one in the village, if you count the ferry, which is outside the village.
I think that's the most important point. It's a bit of a red herring saying 13,000 pubs have closed and ferry's backed by a millionaire and they've got helicopters coming in 3 a day. That's a complete red herring. This is about the heart and soul essence of a village, and we do suffer at the moment because we have a village hall that's declining, that's going to need investment at some stage of rebuilding. People mention, we've got the sports club, but that's a very small private members club. It's not open to the public. And there are people specifically who've come to me over the years, and when I've asked them, I've gone out and asked them, why don't you use the Swan? And there were people with small children who said they wouldn't go back because the language that was used by some people attracted meant it wasn't suitable, and the food offering wasn't suitable. And so I say, where do you go? And they say, well, we go to the nearest pub or somewhere in Tenterden or the Ewe and Lamb or whatever that does have a food offering. And it always comes back to that. And I'm sorry if some establishments have difficulty at attracting and retaining staff, but there's usually a reason for that. And the fact that you might not be on a multiple every half hour bus route is not one of them.
Well, since chefs are supposed to now be very well paid, which I understand makes it more difficult to hire them, they're also presumably going to be mobile and not reliant on the bus. Okay, so can we then come to the point? If everyone said what they wanted to do, we need to think about whether we support or object to the application for a change of use. Who would support the application for a change of use? Who would object to the application for a change of use?
I would, because I feel at the moment the majority of the villagers that's what they would like.
You're saying you're objecting to the
Yeah.
application. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and Colin 5. So we're unanimous that we're objecting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I know I'm 10 minutes overdue for my latest appointment, so if I may.
All right. Thank you
for
very much.
having me.
Thank you very much for coming. Are you going to be in a position to help make sure that our message, I mean obviously you can go on the website and you'll keep in touch with what's happening at the ABC end when the officer considers it.
Yeah, that would be done.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye, John.
Could I have some reasons for objection?
It's an asset of community value. It's acknowledged that it didn't always have as much custom as it might have done, but there was a promise from when it opened to have an evening food offer, which never materialised.
And the majority of those attending an open public meeting were very strongly in favour of it remaining a pub that was open to the village. I think that's important, despite somebody saying it's only 3% of the entire population, so on. But we had an open meeting, 70 plus people came. We've got physical evidence over 40 of the 70, which is, if you looked at what our governments are elected on, that's a pretty impressive percentage vote in itself. Clear evidence that the majority of those commented were against it being changed to a resident.
Okay. You might find something else as well, but that's and I think probably the third one comes before the second one. Okay, correspondence.
Bud's Cottage.
Cottage.
Oh, sure. Well, I did that one before. You sent me back. 1 Bud's Cottages, detached garage and annex following the demolition.
No comments.
Is anyone?
No comment.
Everyone supporting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good, excellent. Right, correspondence. The insurance renewal, assuming we don't do something different before we get to the end of the month, just to show I'm keeping an eye out, it's got the wrong figure on the agenda as far as I could see, unless you had some reason. It's 1047.32 and you type 1097. Unless they have themselves made a slip and put 2 different figures in different
About
places.
a 20% increase then.
What have you got there?
1097.
Okay, well I saw something that you sent out, which was
Without standard charge.
1047.
That's on there.
Which company are you going on
That's because
Sorry?
it's
Which company are you going on
£50 administration.
It's an admin fee.
Yes, Australia.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, well whatever I saw didn't have that on it.
No one, the others bought.
Okay, so it is
No,
one
it's
of
invoice.
those.
Invoice has got it.
People.
That's why.
We've been
Okay.
within 4 or 5
Fair enough.
With a cruise.
different routes.
So I withdraw that then. I
We've
was
got
looking
even
at
one
what
from
the actual insurance
St.
thing
Petersburg to
said.
Moscow.
Okay, let's carry on.
So
Carol,
are we close on that then?
That was last week.
I think
Not
what
quite.
Got to agree.
I think what we're saying is that we're agreeing that renewal unless a change is made beforehand. Now, how are we going to make a change?
Exactly.
We can't.
That's right.
So essentially, we've got to renew it, but it's open to the actual confirmation of arrangements for insurance cover, blah blah blah. 18B can be deferred, but it won't happen till next year.
Means that we've got to, way beforehand, I've got to start January time next year, looking at it.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think there's an alternative for that, because as you say, we haven't got another meeting. I think it's a worry, but not much we can do. But I think before don't wait till January. Before January, we ought to find out what's happening with Clear and Ecclesiastical.
Yes,
as
certainly.
opposed to who we were with before.
Yeah.
Because it's got the feel of the fact that they've just sold their client list.
That's right. I think, but it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Because the other thing is that if they've gone to Ecclesiastical had policy wording for Wolvenden,
Yeah.
which Wolvenden or us could not meet.
Yes.
And then said, well, you didn't meet the policy wording. And they said, well, we have never even seen that.
No.
It was not. It was positively Victorian.
Yeah.
And I always held, as Calc used to hear from me endlessly at the executive meetings, that Cayman Company were taking money as a broker, and their job was to go, and they recommended the policy, and that was, and they should have paid, but of course they didn't. So I think it is a worry. Okay, because we don't know what policy changes have happened. I guess they sent you you said that it's all online and there's a huge document.
Oh yes, because I've got an account and I have to put a password in.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Not something.
well, the annoying thing
you-
is that 3-4 years ago when we switched, 5 years ago maybe, when we switched, there was an 80-page document that I did not go through, but there were quite a few 10 pages of this and 5 pages of that which I did and asked questions about. And now they can slip a new document on you and say, well, that's what we sent. It's not good.
Not good. At all. Okay.
Well, short of having another meeting called, then we are stuck. Silence. Everyone in the same hole.
Well, I think you mentioned that Calc have got some recommendations.
No, Calc have always been with the one that
Rolvenden.
came
Still, they still
I'm
confused.
I kept telling them
It's
to dump
Cayman
them.
Crow. It is Cayman Crow. Cayman Co. Is that is that a broker?
It's a broker. It's actually part of Gallagher, which is not the same Gallagher that does cigarettes.
No, I know
But
Gallagher
it's
Insure as
Gallagher,
well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Cayman Co is the broker. They now market themselves as Gallagher, so maybe I did achieve that much. And they use the system we had when you were first on with me, when Sue was here, was that each year, and then we started doing 2 and 3 year ones, they would come along and say, we've gone out to the market with your requirement. Here are the 3 prices. We recommend the cheapest one. And that's how Wolvenden got Ecclesiastical. It's how we got Ecclesiastical.
Yeah.
Then, before it all went, or maybe after it had started to go pear-shaped, we moved to Hiscox, which was Paul recommended. It was the most expensive one of that year, but we went with them anyway, on the grounds that at least they were better reputed underwriter, until they tried to wriggle out of the what was it that they had a load of trouble with, and it all went to court. The court held a big one of the courts held a big session with all the insurance companies kind of bought into the answer. It was something that happened around, it was COVID, wasn't it? Business interruption.
I think it was business interruption.
Hiscox decided they wouldn't pay for the business interruption, but they lost in court. So they lost their reputation at that point.
Would it be an idea to get whoever was in the running, well, not all of them, but just the front runner, to come to a parish council meeting and ask them those questions that we have a concern over? I mean, to actually have them here.
Well, who do you mean, who's the they?
Well, at the moment, we're contemplating whether we stay with who have we got.
Yeah.
Do we stick or go? And I'm just thinking to myself that how do we extricate from the 160 pages of small type? How do we get a decision moving forward that's relevant for us?
At the minute, we've just got Clear, whoever they are. It used to be BHIC or something.
Yeah.
BHIB, which was BHIB was a big brokers in Birmingham, owned by an Indian entrepreneur, I think. But it was big, and they had apparently done the work with, this is what was sold anyway, they'd done the work with some advice probably from NALC and with Aviva to say this is the policy that has what a local council needs. And then you say, okay, I'll have all of that, but I'll put in my amounts for these things and I'll add a bit here and I'll add a bit there.
Well, that's what we really want, isn't it?
And that's what we did have.
That's exactly right.
But now it's sort of, well, where's it got from there to here with a new name on it?
Yes.
I think our need is still exactly the same. We need something that we're not a guinea pig on. We need something that's going to work for us. We need a policy that other councils are using and haven't had problems. I don't know, but the situation at Rolverton was very complicated and unique, and I wonder whether or not what they suffered, whether we could negotiate a clause that basically meant that we wouldn't be hit by the same thing.
We won't get anything off them.
No, you won't.
Okay. We're just a tiddler.
Well, we're stuck with it. We can't afford not to have.
We've got
to have insurance.
And so I think the risk is that, are we going to get an incident like Rolverton? I don't think we are, because that involved the sale of land, a sale of council assets.
No, it was the Clark stealing money.
The Clark,
Oh, it wasn't the other Rolverton?
No.
There's only
I'm
one
mixing up the
Rolverton.
Northern.
You're thinking of Northern.
I beg your pardon.
No, Rolverton was where the Clark nicked thing.
Clark was,
Personally, I don't think that's a problem with our Clark.
That particular one.
Because we know where she lives.
That's also true.
Yeah.
No, that is true. But the wider thing was that they had a policy where it had a standing clause that unless you changed the mail address of change the officer for at least 2 weeks every year, we've only got one financial officer, and you change the address on the correspondence and this, that and the other, it's positively Dickensian, then the insurance wasn't valid. And that's what they relied on. And
is that still a clause?
I don't know. It was
I think we need to see if that clause is still in the policy. And sorry, I made a mistake. I was thinking of a different problem with a different council. But frankly, that's a very obvious one. If anybody defrauds the council, right? Anyone was, are we protected? And if the policy says no, someone can steal as much as they like from you and you've no recourse, then we don't go anywhere near that. I'm sure we could find a policy that didn't have that.
Is it worth speaking to somebody like Mary, who's obviously clerk for 3 councils, to ask who they're all with?
Well, I did. I went to Annette, who's clerk for Carnarvon, Ware, Hornstone, and to say, that we got an increase. Well, but then 2 of hers are with Zurich, and they didn't increase. But she said she did hear that. I think the village hall was with something else, and they were increasing. So there were, from her experience, some that did at Zurich. And I'm pretty sure that Stone was Zurich as well when I was clerk there.
The only way around this, and it's not great because we're running out of time, but I think probably we can delegate the decision to Yvonne.
Well, I'm happy
because we have delegation on other things, and it's only £1,000-ish. You see, it's not outrageous. The advantage of that is that Yvonne doesn't have to call another council meeting to decide.
So Yvonne, we want you to find a policy that says if you nick the money, we're not liable.
We still get paid out.
We still get paid out. It couldn't be simpler and clearer, could it?
Yeah. No, just in case.
Does the church have a policy against the
They're probably
No.
Come on, they're probably
You'd have to ask
ecclesiastical.
David.
Yeah, I think they have, yes.
Ask David. Because he deals with the insurance for the church. See what.
Ecclesiastical.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, but Paul was saying whether it's like if David deals all the money, are we covered?
I guess the village hall must have a policy.
Yeah.
Okay, it's actually the 13th, so there's another...
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, happy to leave it to Yvonne.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
We'll delegate
Yeah.
the final decision to Yvonne.
Yeah.
And we've got to do Yvonne particularly. I don't know, when does John come back from that?
I haven't got my diary.
Well, it's wet and cold, so it might be sooner than he thinks.
It was interesting that we only got that look today.
Well, I haven't got mine delivered to me yet.
It arrived on my door at about 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Well, it
I've
was
been
on
trying
my
to find
doorstep
out
when I
what's
came out,
happened this week.
and I deliver about 60.
Yeah.
Has he got a note saying when you finish with this, pass it over the road?
I just thought,
No,
I to deliver to me.
fortunately, nobody is, because
I'll
it
place
feels
somebody
like anybody else
else.
takes the number around.
Yeah.
And so you ain't got yours, neither. In fact, I could have brought it if I
I
realised.
did think you might.
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
But I didn't even, I rushed out.
All right, we're not here on Outlook. Come on.
Well, you're paying towards it.
We are indeed, that's true.
Count.
Count membership renewal.
Yes.
516.
Yeah.
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 That is more than it used to be, but they've revised the way they add things up, as well as needing a bit more money.
Well, and that makes it come to more.
Well, it's varied and like this a bit. Email from Jonathan Strong regarding the highway road closure signage. I did see it, I couldn't find it today, but I did see it at the time.
Yeah.
I believe that you were asked to, thank you, you were asked to, by John, weren't you, to take it up with your man?
I said I would.
Yeah.
Yes, just to find out what the system is. As you know, I'm presuming they're the contractor that puts them out. Bods come along, do the work, somebody else comes along, fills the hole.
That's right.
And then the first bods come along and
the person collecting the sign isn't the one who finished the work, you're right.
yeah,
You're right.
they're all, and I get the impression that it's not the people doing the thing that fill the hole either, because you see an empty hole
No, there's a
for 2
signage.
days before someone comes and
There's at least 3 different different groups, if not
Yes.
4.
Absolutely.
So
Unless you're
I would
in
like-
Cooper's Corner, where the residents just put the sign in the hedge.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Well, the long and the short of it, let's be fair about this, the long and the short of this is that no matter how much Jonathan Strong points out that it's a daft idea and a bad system, it ain't going to change
No.
anytime soon. Kent will disappear before
No.
this changes.
But yes.
I think he makes a fair point.
Oh, he's entirely fair.
And he's
Nothing wrong with it.
articulated. I mean, I was amazed at the Peening Quarter repair of the road. A, that was done on time. B, it was done and it was clear by 2 o'clock. And actually, it's one of the best repairs I've seen. So I was going to suggest whoever that crew is, we need to identify them. We need to give cake, coffee, whatever it takes to get them into Wittersham and say, the job is yours. It's a really good example.
It is great. The only thing is,
to be done well.
give it a couple of weeks
It
and it'll be on
is.
again.
But they've left one road closed sign out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It was a hedge.
Just down past you.
It had nothing to do with me.
You can shift it a bit more,
No,
can't
I
you?
can imagine one or two.
I saw
might
it
have
today,
done
yes.
I reported it today.
Well, I think all you can do is reply saying we've noted it and we agree
And we're finding out.
with his points.
Yeah.
I mean, part of Kent's problem is they'll tell you that they're following a national obligation as to do this, that and the other.
Oh.
But it is a mess. I mean, you know what the diversions are like generally.
That might change
They're not
now.
much
I
help.
think it's a job for Wayne.
Yeah, indeed.
When
Boilers are
he's
us.
taken all flags down.
They're already considering taking the flag down.
Or maybe if we had the road signs in yellow and blue, they'd take them down.
Take it down.
Boilers are us.
Big decision.
That's his job, isn't it? That's his business.
What, sorry?
Wayne is a boiler repairman.
Is he? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Well, it was pointed out to me. It's called the Boiler Man
The boiler man.
in Tenterden, and he fixes boilers. I mean, I guess he may employ people. I
In
don't know.
1927, there was a hitman in Chicago called the Boiler Man, and he didn't mend boilers.
Were you around in 1927?
So I might be just guessing then. Okay, working party reports, caretaker. We're going to come to the budget in a moment, so we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah, I just think he's able to keep on top of things at the moment, he was saying, because of the weather.
The grass and everything. Finance, we're coming to the
monthly purpose.
Monthly ones.
The usual. But at this point, could I just ask you to look at this one, please, and compare it
With that one.
this one, because last month all we could do was note the unreconciled. And it's now that's now your reconciled one. And it's exactly the same apart from the R, because I couldn't. I just need to confirm.
I haven't got one, it's gone
You see,
through.
I couldn't
Yeah,
do
sure.
that, but I
It's
just
number
wanted
one,
to see
first
that.
one. Which is
it's
the end of
monthly
year
transaction statement
budget.
for April.
Yes,
We're looking at.
but we're just looking at the moment. We're looking comparing Marches because I couldn't. It wasn't reconciled last month. You saw one, but I hadn't got Lloyd's Bank.
So you want to sign this
Yes,
one?
please. Just so that I can minute and note that it is the same. Now that it's reconciled, it's the same as the unreconciled one. Especially as it's the end of the year, that's the thing. Thanks.
That's that one. Right. So now we're looking at the main one for this month, and as Yvonne explained to me, she had to transfer some money from the savings account in case the precept arrived too late to pay the salaries, but it didn't.
It didn't.
So now she's full of money, so she can move some money back.
Back again. Yeah.
In fact, some into ICC
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Oh, not ICC.
Yes,
CCLA.
CCLA.
Is everyone happy with them?
Yeah.
Yep.
I looked at them earlier, I didn't have a problem. Okay, that's that one.
And obviously the caretaker one.
And there's the caretaker one, which hasn't got very much on it at all. Right. Then we get to end of year budget statement and receipts and payments account. So we've got this one is the budget statement, although I've done it this way rather than the other way. This, just for clarity for you, from what I could make out, Yvonne will confirm or deny, this is what we call our precept account without taking into account the caretaker bit, except that it has the 6,000 in that we pay to the caretaker. Just a few thoughts that came to me. The scribe cemetery subscription, how's that going now? You've got that system.
Yes.
Useful?
Yes.
Okay. The contribution to the scheme, as you see, is the 6,000. That's gone up to 6,000 now. We started on 4, now it's 5, now it's 6. And we're still losing money on it. By about 900, I think, this year.
944,007p.
So it is a problem. Luckily, we've built money up, but we're running out. Kentmen and the Trees, did they never ask for the money? Okay.
No, I wrote and asked them and they said, oh, thank you, yes, we'll let you.
Yeah, sure. They were just falling back.
So,
Right, okie doke. So now I'm going to...
Sign your life away.
So we've started at 4, then we increased to 5, and now we've increased to 6.
Yeah. And we're still losing.
And we're still losing money. Have we asked the other councils to increase?
They have, or you see, we don't get anything from Stone.
Why not?
Well, we're not entitled to anything anyway.
No, these are
Yeah,
things.
but
The 6,000 that we are putting in, we have to pay for the churchyard. And we have to and Coronation Field
and
and
the
all
cemetery.
the stuff that Robert Budan does, we have to pay for as well.
Because we
And all
reduced
the extras that we get Alf to do.
Yes.
That's the way it works. So we don't. Alf does extra bits, but Canardington and Warehorn are very grateful for all that we do. So give us something, and they've increased it each time. We
Right.
now get 600 from both of them. But Stone aren't happy with what we do, so there's no way that they're going to give us anything.
Is it in our interest just to
what we
stop
do for
doing
Stone
it?
is paid for by Ashford.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Ashford's never put their money up.
Hmm.
You could say our 4,000 that's become 5 and 6 is simply inflation. And the other two councils who give us a bit, that is entirely discretionary because it should be paid for by Ashford. But of course it isn't because Ashford never put the money up. We're short of money and most of the work's done here, not the other three, because Ashford's not paying enough for us. However, they say they can do it a lot cheaper. Well, they won't do as much. They will have some benefits. I mean, we presumably have more mowers and strimmers and things for our little bit of work. They spread it around a bit more, I don't know. But mostly they perhaps have people who just work faster and don't take much care. I don't know. But somehow or other, you know, it's just the cost of the work as well. I mean, there's a lot of assets when you look at it.
Yeah.
Gradually look up. But sooner or later we need a new van. Sooner or later we need a new mower. It's going to be tricky. Anyway, let's move on. So that one is, that's the budget statement, and then there's the receipts and payments statement. Now that one, as Sally just said, there's loss of 944 on the caretaker, I figured out, same as she did. The interest from CCLA and Unity Trust is rather interesting, mostly CCLA. That is a mega. It will go down, of course, interest rates will finally go down a bit, but never that much. The 30 mile an hour, the 40 mile an hour speed limit final costs, 3581, that wasn't the total, we paid some in a previous year, yes, okay. Total about 10 or 12.
Because it took a while.
Yeah, of course it did, definitely did, ages. Okay. Good. I mean, I think it's a very clear presentation you did us. It's very good. So I can sign this receipts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Then we get to the agreed reserves. Now I did call you, but you've already come here probably because I never got it. I couldn't find it anywhere. Did other people get agreed reserves sent
Oh,
out?
sorry.
No.
Do you want to defer?
So it's got to be deferred then.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It was deferred from the last meeting for the same reason.
Well, no, only because I haven't got the rest of it.
Okay. Agree the caretaker scheme end of year statement. So here we have this small one. This I couldn't quite figure, Yvonne. What I didn't understand was at 31st of March we've got a balance of cash of 14,213, but we've got 15,793 in reserves.
Well, it's...
So where's the deficit held?
Good point.
That's what, about £1,500?
Yes, that's what we've been putting in. So we're...
Somewhere or other, if it all adds up, I mean, it's because, partly because of the funny way that councils do their accounts, unlike proper places. You have to do what you have to do, I know.
It's partly because we've had an amount and what doesn't get spent in that bit gets added on.
Oh. Sure.
So we should have, but the fact is we've spent some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've been putting in...
So, but somehow or other, that whatever comes out here has to balance somewhere, I mean, on double entry, and therefore it should either have knocked that down
Yes, yes,
or
I
somewhere
suppose,
else
yes.
is out.
Yeah, no, it's because that. It's because I do this as a sort of a separate.
Would you like to look at that again?
Yeah, but I think that's what it is that I've been putting in. What we haven't spent, but
unless the reserves are just a little memorandum account
yes.
and are nothing to do with the actual account.
Oh yes, yes it is. Yeah.
But I thought we used to have an actual reserve listed.
We do. This is that's this one.
Okay. So essentially, the answer to this is we shouldn't be showing that at all. Because it's a figure that you can't justify.
I suppose. You see, you could say that
you can't have money in reserve and the money's not actually there.
On the budget, we haven't spent.
In simple terms, shouldn't there be income, then expenditure, and if there's a difference, that's what you send off to your reserve account. If it's a loss, that's what you then discuss to work out how to make it up.
Yes, it's just different, yeah.
I think what we've got here is apples and pears on the same sheet.
Yes.
But I think that replacement reserve is misleading as it stands. But let's defer that and you have a proper think about it rather than putting you under pressure.
It should, if it was a business, it would be in your balance sheet, not on your P&L.
We don't do anything like that, you see.
Well, I know
we
that.
have this silly system in councils.
I think we need to review that situation.
Yeah. You know what? In the same way as that we put notes about CCLA and etc. on the bottom left-hand corner of that, that's probably a good place to put the reserve note.
Yeah.
Because it's managing the information sort of rather
if we go back to when I first arrived and David Lewis was on the council and he knew how these things were and the parish council then had very little money. I mean, it was really hard up. By the end of the year, can we afford another bill before April 1st? And he had advised, I remember Elon reporting, he had advised that if we had any money around at all, we ought to show, because he stayed on for after I got here, you got here for a couple of years. Oh no, for the first 4 years. He only went at the end of the 4 years. So we started to get a bit of money. And he said, well, I don't know whether this was an out-of-date idea, but he said, if you've got money, you should be showing that it's a reserve for something. Otherwise, you've got that money towards the next budget. It was this kind of a bit more like the civil service. You get your money and you must spend it, otherwise it's taken away. But that doesn't work with councils. I mean, we know Kent's got millions in reserves. So you can have reserves. So he said, well, put it in reserves. Oh, no, we'll have a reserve for this and a reserve for that. But it was reserving the money, as Paul said, that was actually in the bank. What's happened here, because Yvonne says, oh, we'll add another 500 to the van reserve each year, it's run ahead of the money that's actually there. And I think that's probably what's happened.
I think it's fair to say it's good practice, though, to build up those reserves.
Oh, absolutely.
And for me, looking at it, what I want to do is be reassured that we're not going to someone's going to say, we need a brand new van and where can we get 20 grand from? That's the sort of information that is really useful.
Sure.
Thank
you.
So
we should have the reserves, but I don't think they can be bigger than the cash. We'll leave that with you.
I still think they're mean in stone.
I know how it's happened.
Yeah, but I don't mind how it's happened. I think the presentation has just got to change because otherwise it's sort of misleading or something because those reserves don't exist in full. They're 1,500 short. But as you say, I know how it's happened. The reserves build themselves up. The cash does whatever the cash does. It wouldn't match if it was like this, but all of a sudden it's gone like that. That's not a criticism, it's just happened and I'm pointing it out.
So put it somewhere else and then test it out with John and Alan.
They'll say it's all right. They'll say it's all right. This is the problem.
Some interesting observations now,
She'll be praying that John doesn't listen on the meeting. Not the same as Alan anyway. So we can't do that one. We'll hold that one over pending. That John can deal with that. He won't mind. Peeling quarter there, that's been granted, that's been granted, that's been granted.
Yeah.
Open spaces. Nothing to say on open spaces. No. That's all right. Open spaces. It's not yet. That's what I'm saying. There's nothing to say. Highways, Paul.
I got my earlier comment about the landslide,
Yeah.
which I'm hopeful that's. It was done very quickly, and it looks very pretty. And I think we just need to keep reminding, as Yvonne does, people that there is a perfectly useful, workable reporting system, and it's not called the parish council.
Exactly.
It can be done online. It works well. You know, we get in the queue.
PROWs.
And I've reported today the road closed sign that was left over and the hedge on Swan Corner, which now means you can't walk round with a pushchair because you get caught up on a bramble.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. PROWs.
No, nothing.
Cemetery churchyard.
No, looks very nice.
Does
good.
Yeah, done a good job.
Next meeting.
Sorry, I met with Megan from KB Ecology on Monday.
Ah.
Oh, is that Megan in June or Megan in May?
Megan in May. Because they'd obviously misunderstood. And I pointed out.
Words of one syllable.
She said we can. They apologised and we can fit you in 9:30 on Monday. So I asked to meet her down there so that I could explain it all. So, because it's not marked out. Alki puts posts and people remove them, so who we don't know or why we don't know. So you can't actually see where the boundary is, but it's 6 metres from the tree line, so you can knock it out. So I explained everything and she asked questions and she will produce a report in due course.
Speaking of
due course, not
yes,
date.
no, because
how long?
Alan will be devastated if you missed that meeting.
I didn't.
Did anyone notice that? My understanding when these bio-thingy reports came in, that there was an exclusion for household applications, and yet we've got 2 household applications today that include them. One is a very sketchy one, seemingly like, I better write something which is not adequate.
Yeah.
And the other one is a properly produced report that my understanding was they didn't require.
Oh. It shouldn't be on a household. I went through all this rigmarole because the second thing we had to have for our huge Gypsy Traveller car park, all of 12 foot by 10 feet, was a full-blown planning application, and that required, as so it said, a full thing. But I actually phoned up and I said, I was polite, and they said, oh, don't bother to do that, which completely made a nonsense of it being in the first place. But I agree with you. I believe that household planning application does not require full ecological and biological biodiversity, etc., which is several pages.
And there's one of them got it. Maybe it's not a sort of a formal one, but I don't know why they did it. Okay, so that's cemetery. So adding to information, anybody? Sally?
No.
Colin, Paul, me, Clark?
Yeah. Oh, that you missed data next.
No, I did do that earlier before you took me back to cemetery. Okay.
Apologies for next month.
We're going to miss you.
Miss Alan, yeah, so get the chairs back.
Tell us when we're off.